Chapter 1. The Dust of Slavery. The seed of stars whispered from the remnants of a shattered holocron. In a voice no longer bound by time, in the black breath between stars, where silence coils around the bones of dead gods, there came a child, not of nobility, not of prophecy, not of freedom, but born beneath twin suns, in chains of flesh and fate. Tatooine, a scorched and forgotten world, where moisture is drawn from dust, and dreams are bartered like junk. There, in the sweat-drenched dusk of a slave quarter, a woman cried out, not in fear, but in wonder, for her son, born without a father, was heavy with something older than time. The midwives did not see it. The traders did not hear it. But the Force, the ancient breath that binds all things, it shuddered ever so slightly, as if a star had twitched in its slumber. Anakin, she named him. Little Arnie, he laughed in the sand. He built with broken parts, he raced pods, not meant for his kind. And though the chains on his ankle rusted deeper with every year, his eyes turned upward, toward the stars that no slave could touch. But the Force? The Force did not grant him peace. It whispered to him in sparks and screws, in patterns no child should see. He dreamt of water and drowning skies, and of his mother vanishing into ash. The other children feared him. The traders kept their distance. Even Watto, his bulbous master, spoke of him in half-jokes and nervous grunts, for tools obeyed him. Luck bent for him, and machines sang for him, as if remembering. One day a stranger came, not a merchant, not a slaver, but cloaked in light, with a saber at his belt, and an ancient burden in his voice. Qui-Gon Jinn, a Jedi of old lore and older doubt. He saw the boy, and knew, not with logic, not with science, but with fear. With awe, he whispered of prophecy, of balance, of a chosen one, born to end the war between light and shadow. And so, like myth retold, Anakin stood before a machine, meant to measure life itself. The meter shook. Beyond Jedi comprehension, more midichlorians than Master Yoda himself. Not just alive, but burning with potential too vast, too wild. But nothing sacred is born without consequence. Already the dark listened. Already the Sith, hidden for 1,000 years, waiting, hungering, felt the tremble in the currents of destiny. Yet the Jedi, blind in tradition, saw only the surface, a gifted child, a rare anomaly, a servant's son, perhaps, but still a child. They could not feel the ancient wound, the cosmic crack he was born to walk, the tightrope stretched between extinction and salvation. Qui-Gon begged for his training. The council hesitated, fear in their voices, warnings in Yoda's gaze, clouded this boy's future but the wheels turned. The game began to win the boy's freedom. Qui-Gon bet on a progress, a brutal, deadly trial. Engines screamed. Sandstorms swallowed sound, and Anakin flew, not like a boy, but like a god returning to the sky. He won. The boy won. And in that moment, the galaxy turned. Just slightly, he left his mother behind, tears unspoken, chains unbroken. Her shadow lingered, even as he boarded the ship of stars. The stars that once watched him from afar, now pulled him in. He was free, and yet, his chains had only just begun. The Force did not rejoice. It shivered, for within this child, both the Savior and the Destroyer had awoken, and though he smiled, the seed had been planted, a seed that would grow in fire, a seed that would become legend, and the holocron falls silent, for now, but the next whisper stirs. Chapter 2. The Echoes of Lost Nights. The boy walked into the heart of myth, but the myth was dying. Coruscant world of towers and trembling light, where the Jedi temple pierced the clouds like a blade of stone. Here the order had endured for 1,000 generations, but rot had already seeped into the roots, and though the boy arrived with hope, the walls around him whispered of endings. Anakin Skywalker, slave no longer, Padawan not yet. A question wrapped in flesh, too old, too wild, too feared. The Jedi Council, 12 still figures, bound by law, examined him not as a soul, but as a fracture. Master Windu's voice was like iron. Master Yoda's voice was like wind through bones. Fear in him, I sense, they said. Dangerous he may become. And so the boy stood, small in a cathedral of giants, judged not for his deeds, but for the shadow curling behind his destiny. Qui-Gon stood alone, a rebel cloaked in robes. He believed the boy was the chosen one, the one spoken of in dusty scrolls, born to bring balance to the Force. But none agreed, not fully, not truly. They saw imbalance in him, and in truth, they were not wrong, even. Now, the boy's dreams grew strange. He heard voices that were not voices. He saw oceans in the Force, currents both light and dark, and beneath it all, he felt a pull, not toward peace, but toward control. He wanted to fix things, to stop death, to unmake suffering. Even the Jedi did not dream so boldly, and still, despite warnings, the Council allowed him to train, not because they trusted him, but because they feared what he might become if left alone. And so they handed him to Obi-Wan Kenobi no longer, a Padawan himself, but barely more than a boy, master and student, a bond forged in war and doubt. Obi-Wan, loyal to the code. Anakin, loyal to no law but his own heart. They clashed, they learned, they saved each other more than once. But always, beneath the camaraderie, a silence grew. Anakin questioned, Obi-Wan obeyed. Anakin desired, Obi-Wan restrained, and so, like tectonic plates, they moved together and apart. The galaxy spun. Whispers of war thickened. Separatists stirred. The Sith, thought extinct, remained hidden, their hands deep in every fracture. But the Jedi, they meditated. They watched. They waited, even as the dark side coiled. Deeper around them, they followed the code. Even as the truth slipped from their fingers, they clung to their ancient laws. Anakin trained harder than any before. His power grew, faster, sharper, too fast. The temple's walls could not contain his hunger. He wanted to see the galaxy, to protect it, to save it. And when he spoke of his mother, no Jedi answered. When he asked of love, they turned away. Attachment, they said, was the path to suffering. But in the quiet of the archives, Anakin began to wonder, is detachment the path to peace, or to apathy? Is the Jedi way a cure, or a prison? Already the cracks deepened. Already a presence watched from shadows. Sidious, the true Sith Lord, a spider at the center of the galactic web. He saw the boy and smiled, not as a Jedi, not yet as a Sith, but as a storm waiting to be named. The Jedi had welcomed Anakin with half-hearts and divided minds, and though the temple doors opened for him, he walked its halls as an echo. Never fully trusted, never fully home, he would become their greatest knight, their sharpest blade, and the blade would turn, the whisper dims, but the flame has been lit. Chapter 3. The shadows between master and apprentice. They walked among the stars, as brothers, but the stars held secrets, and brothers can become strangers. Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, names that would echo through time like cracked bells. Master and student, guide and wildfire. Their bond was strong, yes, but not equal, not balanced. For Obi-Wan believed in the order, in discipline, in tradition carved from the bones of ancient Jedi, and Anakin believed in people, in love, in freedom, in doing what felt right, even when it defied law. They quarreled, they bled together. They laughed in battle and fell into silence in the moments after, and yet each victory brought them closer and further apart. The Force, ever whispering, stretched between them like a fragile thread. Tension lived in every lesson. Obi-Wan sought control. Anakin sought truth. It was during the siege of Anjouan, in the ruins of a forgotten fortress, that Anakin first disobeyed a direct order. A risk taken, lives saved, but at what cost? Obi-Wan scolded him. Anakin stared into the stars, unmoved. It worked, he said. And somewhere, beneath his voice, the Force trembled. It was not rebellion, not yet, but the first shadow had stretched across his heart. In quiet moments, Anakin would tinker, not with weapons, but with machines, droids, engines, things that obeyed, things that did not die, things he could control. He trusted machines more than people. People lied, people broke, people left. He did not speak often of his mother, but when he dreamed, her voice echoed like wind in a canyon, soft, calling, fading, and Obi-Wan did not see. He trained the boy as a Jedi, but not as a brother, not as a son, for Obi-Wan had never been taught to love, only to obey. Traveled from warzone to warzone, settled skirmishes with lightsabers and words, brought peace or the illusion of it. Anakin was a natural, charismatic, powerful, but also impulsive. When villagers cried, he acted. When bureaucrats stalled, he threatened. The people loved him. The council watched him, and behind all of it, the dark side waited, not with wrath, but with understanding. The Sith do not seduce with rage, they seduce with truth. A truth the Jedi feared to speak, that love is not weakness, that power is not shame, that destiny is not submission one night, beneath the red moons of Jakkilia. Anakin asked Obi-Wan, "Have you ever been in love?" Obi-Wan hesitated, then said only, "That is not the Jedi way." Anakin did not ask again, but the question remained, a splinter in his soul, and in the silence that followed, a whisper brushed across his thoughts. The Jedi will never understand you. That whisper had no voice yet, but it would soon. Time passed. Victories mounted. Anakin became a symbol, a golden knight, a rising star, but symbols cast long shadows, and in one such shadow, he began to notice her again. Padme Amidala, senator, former queen, a figure of light in the rot of politics. Their eyes met in a hangar, brief, too long, it was innocent. Then it was not, but that tale waits for another chapter. For now, the Jedi praised Anakin's strength. While fearing his future, he was not like the others. He did not fit, not truly, and the Force, ancient and uncertain, offered no guidance. It simply watched and waited for beneath the robes, beneath the smiles, beneath the lessons and laughter. The rift between master and apprentice grew deeper, and when rifts grow deep enough, They become chasms. The whisper lingers, sharpening into flame. Chapter 4. The Cloak of War. The fire of love the galaxy ignited, not with prophecy, not with revelation, but with the marching drums of war. The Clone Wars had begun. Planets burned beneath banners of control and rebellion. Ships like metal titans clashed in endless void. Jedi, once guardians of peace, became generals, wielding sabers not in meditation, but in command. And Anakin Skywalker, his sword war suited him, not because he craved blood, but because it offered clarity. No council to question him, no laws to bind him, only battle, only choices, only the thrill of doing what needed to be done. They called him the hero with no fear, a title forged not in peace, but in fire. Beside him always, his commander, Ahsoka Tano, a girl given to him as Padawan against his will. But not for long. He taught her not as the council wished, but as he had wanted to be taught, boldly, emotionally, truthfully. She learned quickly, and like him, she saw the flaws in the order. She questioned, she doubted, she cared, and for that, he loved her like a sister, like a fragment of what he could have been. But love in war is never still. It bends, it burns, and then, amid battles and politics, sieges and sandstorms, she returned, Podman, now a senator, a voice of reason in a dying republic. Clothed in light, yet shadowed by burden, she had not forgotten him, nor he her. Their reunion was a whisper, then a storm, a kiss, a secret, a marriage hidden from all. In her arms, he found silence, not the silence of meditation, but of meaning. With her, the galaxy faded. The war, the council, the prophecy, all distant ghosts. Only she was real. But secrecy has a cost, and the Force does not favor lies. Anakin began to change. The lines between duty and desire blurred. He saw treachery in every council glance. He saw delay where action was needed. He saw love as his anchor and feared losing it more than death itself. The dreams returned, visions of Padme screaming, dying, alone, and always he stood powerless. It was not battle that frightened him, not wounds, not death, but loss, the echo of slavery, the helplessness of watching the one he loved disappear, just as he had lost his mother. He would not endure that again, and so he began to search, not for peace, but for power. Whispers reached him, stories buried in forbidden texts, of Sith who could cheat death, of powers the Jedi called unnatural. He brought these questions to Obi-Wan. To Yoda, they warned, they cautioned, they recoiled. Let go, they said. Accept death, but Anakin could not, would not. To let go was to betray love, to betray her. And somewhere in the shadows, a voice listened, a voice cloaked in kindness, dripping with truth, waiting for the right moment to strike the chord of doubt. War waged on, bodies fell, victories were won, but the Republic decayed. Anakin's name rose in glory, but within he frayed. The Jedi praised him in public, questioned him in private. He felt their eyes, he felt their fear. He no longer knew if he stood among allies or judges. Only Padme remained pure. Only she was light, but light alone cannot hold back prophecy, nor the hunger of a heart desperate to defy fate. And so, as the Clone Wars deepened, as the galaxy crumbled under banners and blades, Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Knight, war hero, husband in secret, stood at the threshold. Behind him, the teachings of his youth before him, a chasm carved in dreams and death, and above it all, the Force whispered, "Choose, but the choice will unmake you." Chapter 5. Visions of the burning mother, the Force dreams, and through it, so did he. Anakin Skywalker, hero of the war, husband in hiding, son of destiny, did not sleep as other men did. In slumber, he drifted through fire, through smoke, through the echo of a scream he could never silence. Padme. She was dying, always the same, a birthing chamber filled with red light, her voice trembling, her hand reaching for something unseen, then silence, her breath fades, and she is gone. Every time he closes his eyes, she dies, and the Force, which once felt warm and infinite, now pulsed cold, unclear. Its voices no longer comforted him. They clashed and contradicted light, whispering surrender, darkness offering answers. And in that discord, the echo of another vision returned. Older, deeper, his mother, Shmi, broken beneath Tuscans, her hands bound, her spirit fading, her final breath taken while he was still too far to save her. That was the first death he could not stop. Padme would not be the second. He would defy it. He would conquer it. He had to, in the temple archives. Anakin searched not for ancient Jedi wisdom, but for secrets buried and forgotten. Tales of Sith sorcery, of rituals that bent death, of lords who twisted time to save what they loved. He knew these were forbidden, but fear has no master. And fear was now his only companion. The Jedi told him to let go, to embrace the natural cycle, to trust the will of the Force. But what is natural about helplessness? What is sacred about watching someone you love wither and die? They preached peace, but he saw cowardice. He saw chains, and still he said nothing. Not to Obi-Wan, not to the Council, not to Pan, because the truth would unravel everything, so he carried the burden alone. And the burden grew heavy. Palpatine saw, he always saw. The Chancellor Regal, kind, ever smiling, became Anakin's confidant. Not with direct words, but with empathy. "Are the Jedi holding you back?" he would ask softly. "Do they understand what you're becoming?" He never pushed. He simply listened, and that listening was more than the Jedi had ever offered. "You are the only one with the strength to end this war," Palpatine said once, his voice like oil across water. Perhaps the only one strong enough to prevent death itself. Anakin did not answer, but his silence was permission. The dreams worsened, blood in Padme's mouth, her breath slowing, an invisible hand choking her, his own hand. He woke, drenched in sweat, his breathing uneven, his heart screaming without sound. He began to watch her as she slept, counting her breaths, listening for tremors in her voice. He asked her if she was in pain. She said no, but he didn't believe her, because the Force had already shown him the ending. And if he could not change it, what power did he truly have? Once, deep within the temple, he stood before the great statue of a long-dead Jedi Master, and he asked aloud, "Is it wrong to want to save her?" The stone offered no reply. Only the wind from the high windows answered. It sounded almost like a whisper, or a warning, or an invitation. In the shadows of his soul, something began to stir. A presence, a voice without form, a door unopened, but soon to crack. The name of this voice was not yet known, but its promise was clear. You will not lose her. You will not be weak again. You will learn what the Jedi forbid, and thus, with each passing night, the line between love and fear blurred, between fear and power, and the fire that took his mother now reached again, not to consume, but to transform. The seed of the dark side had been planted long ago. Now it bloomed in visions, bathed in grief and starlight. The boy who was born from the Force now questioned whether the Force was ever his ally. The whisper quiets, but not for long. Chapter 6. The voice behind the mask. There is a voice that does not shout. It does not command. It waits. It whispers. And when it speaks, it sounds like truth to Anakin Skywalker. That voice belonged to Chancellor Palpatine, a man beloved by the Senate, a symbol of stability during war, a fatherly presence, always near, always listening. But beneath his kind eyes and careful words was a presence ancient and coiled, a serpent of the dark. Anakin did not see the fangs. He heard only comfort. The Chancellor spoke not as a master, but as an equal, not of peace, but of power. "You are not like the others," he said. "They fear you because you are strong." And Anakin believed it, because it echoed what he already felt, that the Jedi Order no longer trusted him, that they restrained him not to teach him, but to control him. The war dragged on, more battles, more deaths. Anakin's name grew, his legend expanding like fire across dry fields. But with each victory, he grew colder. Ahsoka, his student, his shadow, was gone now. Falsely accused by the Jedi, abandoned, betrayed, she left, not in anger, but in truth, and Anakin saw it for what it was. The Order was cracking. Even those who followed the code were cast aside. So how could he trust them to protect Padmon, to protect anyone? He couldn't. So when Palpatine began to speak of powers the Jedi denied, Anakin listened. "Have you heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis, the Wise?" A simple question, but in that moment, history shifted. Palpatine's voice dropped low, almost reverent. He spoke of a Sith Lord so powerful, so wise, he could manipulate the midichlorians to create life, and to prevent death. He had such a knowledge of the dark side, Palpatine said, that he could even keep the ones he cared about from dying. Anakin's breath stopped. His dreams, his fears, his hidden terror answered in a single story. He asked, "Is it possible to learn this power?" And the voice replied, "Not with knowledge, but with poison, not from a Jedi." The seed bloomed, and with it, a choice one. The Jedi could never prepare him for. Obi-Wan saw it. Yoda felt it. Mace Windu spoke it plainly. The boy is dangerous. And now the Council, in their fear, commanded Anakin to spy on the Chancellor, to betray a man who had never betrayed him. The Jedi had made their error. They forced him to choose between loyalty to the Order and loyalty to the one man who had given him what the Jedi never would. Understanding, he stood in the temple, alone, surrounded by statues of Jedi long dead, and he asked the Force again, "What am I becoming?" But the Force no longer answered in peace, only in echoes, only in dreams of fire, and breath that sounded not like wind, but like metal. The mask was still unseen, but its voice had already begun to speak through Palpatine, and deep inside Anak's soul a fracture widened, one that could not be mended with wisdom, or love, or light. A choice had been offered, not directly, not yet, but it hovered in the air like a blade drawn just out of sight, and soon the blade would fall. The whisper fades, but the mask waits. Chapter 7. The betrayal of Peace. Peace does not shatter in a roar. It dies in silence, with held breath, with eyes turning away, And in the twilight of the Clone Wars, peace was already a corpse, its death unnoticed by those who claimed to protect it. Anakin Skywalker stood at the fulcrum of empires. Jedi Knight, Republic war hero, secret husband, unwitting pawn. But more than any title, he was a man unraveling. The Jedi Council summoned him, not with reverence, not with trust, but with calculation. They gave him a seat among them, not out of honor, but necessity. "You are close to the Chancellor," Mace Windu said. "There are things we must know. Spy." They would make him a spy on the one man who called him friend, the one who promised him power to save Pad, the one who saw what he truly was. The Jedi did not understand. They could not so. Anakin smiled and obeyed. But inside he turned. Each word spoken in the council chamber felt like another betrayal of trust, of belief, of him. He went to Padme. His voice trembled. "They want me to spy on him, on Palpatine." Her brow furrowed, but her voice was calm. "Do you think he's dangerous?" Anakin didn't answer. Couldn't, because he did not know where danger ended and destiny began. He only knew that death was coming for her, that the Jedi offered no way to stop it, and that Palpatine did. That night, he stood beneath the great spires of Coruscant, watching ships streak through the smog, and in the shadow of the city, he made his decision. He would find the truth. Not for the Council, not for the Order, but for her, for Padme in the Chancellor's private chambers. The trap was already set. Palpatine sat in darkness, his hands folded, his gaze kind. "I know what they've asked of you," he said, as if plucking the thought from Anakin's skull. "They do not trust you. They never have." Anakin looked away, his fists clenched, and then, with a voice no longer cloaked, Palpatine revealed himself. "I am the Sith Lord they fear." The room stopped breathing. No rage, no lightning, only truth. Anakin rose, reached for his saber, but did not ignite. The Force swirled around them, thick with conflict, with choice. "Are you going to kill me?" Palpatine asked. And Anakin, voice hoarse, asked instead, "If one is to understand the great mystery, one must study all its aspects. A Sith, not a monster, not a beast, but a man, offering answers, and Anakin was starving for answers. He ran to the Jedi, told Windu the truth. Palpatine is the Sith Lord. The Council did not thank him. They did not listen to the fear in his voice. They saw only utility. "Stay behind," Windu ordered. "We'll deal with him." And so Anakin stood, in silence, as the Jedi marched toward fate, leaving him behind like a child untrusted. They did not see it. But that moment, that rejection, was the final cut. The Force screamed, and Anakin followed to Palpatine's chambers, to the storm, to the edge of destiny. He arrived as Windu held the saber to Palpatine's throat, and in that moment, truth shattered. The Sith Lord begged, powerless, wounded, or so it seemed. Mace said, "He must die." Anakin pleaded, "It's not the Jedi way." But Windu had no time for pleas, only judgment. And Anakin, torn between law and love, fear and faith, chose. With a single swing, he severed Windu's hand, and Palpatine, smiling now, unleashed the storm. Lightning, screams, shattered glass. A body hurled into night. The Jedi Master fell, and peace fell with him. In silence, Anakin knelt, not to tradition, not to darkness, but to necessity. "I will do whatever you ask. Just help me save her." And Sidious, no longer hidden, placed a withered hand upon him. From this day forward, you shall be known as Darth Vader. Not a name, a sentence, the prophecy corrupted. The chosen one claimed. He rose as Vader, not armored yet, but broken, and the galaxy, in that moment, began to die. The whisper falls into silence, but it is the silence before the temple burns. Chapter 8. The temple burns in silence. Night fell over Coruscant, but it was not night that brought darkness. It was betrayal. From the highest spire of the Jedi Temple, the stars still shone. Statues stood as they had for centuries, hooded, proud, blind. Below them, the Force shifted. A whisper became a scream. Vader walked up the steps, not in armor, not yet a machine, but as a man who had traded everything, name, soul, future, for a single promise, to save the one he loved. The temple guards greeted him. They did not raise alarms. He was Anakin, a hero. He passed through the great doors, his cloak trailing. Like smoke, his saber already humming with fate. And behind him, the 501st Legion marched clones in white, trained for loyalty, prepared for war, but not this, not the death of their teachers, their comrades, their Jedi. He did not hesitate, nor did they. The order had fallen before a blade was even drawn. It simply hadn't known it yet. The children felt it first. The younglings barely old enough to speak to the Force. They looked up from their studies, their games, their small dreams, and saw their champion return. Master Skywalker, one asked, "What are we going to do?" He answered with silence. Then light, then death. No scream was loud enough to reach the stars. No holocron would dare record the truth. The temple shook. Not from battle, but from the Force itself recoiling. A wound torn across the galaxy's soul. In the war room, masters fell. In the archives, ancient tomes burned. In the meditation halls, the air itself tasted of sorrow. And Anakin Vader moved through it all like a storm, with no center. No mercy, only purpose. He saw their faces, felt their fear, and still he struck them down. They had not saved his mother. They would not save Pab. They had lied, chained the Force in dogma. Now they would be cleansed. And if this was darkness, then darkness was justice. Elsewhere, across the stars, the order was given. Execute Order 66. And like a plague, the Jedi fell on Kashyyyk, on Felucia, on Mygito, sabers extinguished. Bodies crumpled. Each death echoed through the Force like glass breaking in eternity. Yoda staggered. Obi-Wan bled. The survivors became ghosts. But the temple burned in silence, its heart pierced by the very one it had once called chosen. Sidious watched from his tower, hands folded, eyes alive with ancient fire. His apprentice was not complete, but he was claimed. The boy was gone. Only the shell remained. The Jedi Order, once the guardians of 1,000 worlds, was Ashdod, and none knew who had struck the killing blow. Not yet, not even Padme when Anakin returned to her. His hands were still blood-warm. She embraced him, he lied, told her the Jedi had tried to overthrow the Republic, that they had betrayed peace, that he had brought order, and she believed him because love can blind even the strongest heart. But a crack formed between them, a silence deeper than any lie, for the man before her was no longer hers, and far above them, the temples. Smoke curled into the stars, like a scream no one would hear. The light had fallen. The galaxy simply hadn't realized it yet. Chapter 9. The Baptism of Mustafa Mustafa. A world not born, but bled. a scar in the galaxy's skin, where mountains belch fire and rivers of molten rock carry the screams of ancient wounds. Here, the Sith sent their new disciple, not for war, not for justice, but for cleansing. The Separatist Council, the architects of the Clone Wars, were gathered like cattle in a fortress of steel and obsidian. They awaited the war's end. They believed they would be spared. They had not heard the name Vader. They did not know what it meant, but they would learn. Anakin Skywalker entered the facility in silence, cloaked, hooded, his eyes now dimmed with something colder than rage, certainty. The droids did not challenge him. The council members bowed. He activated his saber, and when the blade ignited, the room became a tomb. One by one, no pleas heard, no mercy shown. These were not warriors. They were schemers, cowards, witnesses to a war now no longer needed, and so he silenced them. A crimson flood in the molten dark. The war, as the galaxy had known it, ended not with a treaty, but with the hiss of a lightsaber and the gasps of dying men outside. The world wept fire. Inside, Vader stared through the transparent window as the bodies cooled behind him. He did not speak. He did not grieve. He had brought peace. At last, but peace is fragile, and love even more so. Padma arrived. Her ship descended like a silver tear through a sky of embers. She ran to him. Anakin, she breathed, but he was already fading. His arms still held her, but his soul stood elsewhere, shrouded in new purpose. He told her of the new empire, of the end of corruption, of how he had done it all, for her to protect her, to save her from the fate the Force had shown him. But Padme, gentle, wise, unwavering, stepped back. "You're breaking my heart." She had not come alone. OBI-1 had stowed away, emerging now as a ghost from the hatch. Anakin's eyes turned cold. "You brought him here to kill me." His voice cracked like shattered metal. Betrayal. Not by the Jedi, not by the Council, but by her. The fire of Mustafar now burned within him, and as the lava surged, master and apprentice faced one another, not as teacher and student, not even as enemies, but as the last two fragments of a dying prophecy. One still believed in the light. The other had drowned in shadow to protect what he loved, and in doing so, had destroyed it. The duel erupted. Fierce, unrelenting, blades clashed like screams through iron halls. Molten rivers boiled around their feet, and the Force, that ancient current, shivered as if it too could not bear what was unfolding. Padme collapsed. The fire had stolen her breath, and still the duel raged on, across walkways, over crumbling machinery, through the storm of fury and sorrow, until, at last, Obi-Wan stood above him. Anakin leaped, and Obi-Wan struck. One flash of light, and the body of Darth Vader fell to the ash, his leg severed, his arm gone. His saber tumbled into flame. He screamed, not from pain, but from loss. His limbs, his brother, his love, everything burning. Obi-Wan wept. "You were the chosen one. It was said you would destroy the Sith, not join them." But Vader could no longer hear. His voice was flame. His body blackened by betrayal, by the very fire he thought he could control. And as Obi-Wan turned away, leaving saber and ash behind, the man who was Anakin was consumed. The Force did not cry out. It held its breath, for something darker was about to rise. Chapter 10. The Iron Womb of Vader. There are no screams in the void, only echoes. And when the fire had finished its feast upon flesh, silence was all that remained. He did not die. The Force would not let him. Or perhaps the dark side would not release what it had claimed. The broken body was found, not by Jedi, not by friends, but by him, Sidious, master of lies, reaper of prophecy. He stood amid the ash of Mustafar, his cloak untouched by flame, his gaze filled with triumph. "My apprentice," he whispered, kneeling beside what remained. "Rise." But the body could not move. The lungs were scorched, the limbs gone, the eyes blinded by smoke. There was no Anakin, only need to breathe, need to continue, need to stop the death he himself had already sown. And so he was taken, not to a temple, not to a tomb, but to a place of machines, where death and life could be rewritten. The chamber was cold. Metal hands moved with surgical cruelty. Needles, clamps, iron bone. There was no light, only pain, only the whine of drills and the hum of wires, burrowing into skin that no longer bled. And above it all, the voice of Sidious. "Your body is broken," he said, "but your will survives." And what was left of Anakin did not scream, it endured. For Padme, for the child he still believed might live, for the dream, however corrupted, of peace. And then the mask, lowered with reverence, a shell of black breath, a tomb of iron and silence. When it sealed, he was no longer a man, he was a machine. His lungs were now fire, his voice a broken thing choked by breath. The chamber hissed. The mask came to life, and Darth Vader stood. But with his first steps came the final severing. Sidious approached. "She is dead." 3 words. A dagger plunged into the soul's last corner of light. He had done it for her. All of it. The betrayals, the war, the fall to save her. And now she was gone. The Force trembled. The machines rattled, and Vader's screams split the galaxy. The scream of a god shattered and refreshed of a man who had tried to change fate and instead fulfilled it. He reached for the walls. They crumpled. He reached for Sidious, the master only. Smiled, let him rage, let him break, for what rose from the table that day was not Anakin Skywalker, it was Vader. Born not of prophecy fulfilled, but of prophecy defiled, a chosen one entombed in shadow, a slave again, but this time to purpose. And in the silence of the imperial halls, his breath became a hymn, not of life, not of hope, but of order, of obedience, of fear. The galaxy would forget the boy, the brother, the lover, the hero. It would remember only the mask, the voice, the shadow, the fire had ended Anakin and given birth to something eternal. Chapter 11. The rule of the shadow and the galaxy was silent. But beneath that silence, fear bloomed. The Jedi were gone, their temples hollow, their lightsabers extinguished. The Republic, too, was no more, its banners replaced by the black sun of the Empire. A new order had risen, not in triumph, but in ashes, and at its heart 2 shadows reigned, one cloaked in politics and venom, Emperor Palpatine, Dark Lord of the Sith, the architect of ruin; the other, a spectre wrapped in armor, haunted by fire, bound in breath. Darth Vader. He did not speak often. He did not need to. The hiss of his respirator was prophecy enough. Vader became the Emperor's hand, not of flesh, but of judgment. Where he was sent, systems fell quiet, rebels vanished, dissenters were erased. Entire populations learned to bow before the shadow. He walked among governors and warlords, never hurried, never moved by pleas. He did not threaten. He did not explain. He acted. The Force bent around him like a dying star. Some whispered he was not a man at all, that beneath the mask was a droid, or a monster, or nothing. But they were wrong, for deep beneath the metal, beneath the wires, beneath the machine, Anakin Skywalker still lived, buried, dreaming, screaming each time he walked the silent corridors of the Death Star. His mind flickered to another hallway, a sunlit temple, the laughter of younglings, the warmth of Padme's hand in his dot. But such memories were poison, and the Emperor made sure he drank often. There is no Anakin, Sidious would remind him, only power, only Vader. He was sent to hunt the scattered Jedi, one by one. He found them, old masters hiding in ruins, knights turned farmers, Padawans now adults. He killed them all, but they did not curse him. They pitied him, for they saw what he had become, a cage built from fear, and every saber he extinguished only deepened the darkness within. The armor was not a gift. It was a prison. It dulled his senses. It muted the Force. It forced him to feel nothing, so that he would never feel too much. But some nights, when the galaxy slept, he would stand alone in his chamber, the mask removed, his ruined face lit only by the starlight through transpersonal, and he would remember her Padmam, the name still echoed, though Sidious had erased every image, every recording. She had become myth, a forbidden thought, but he remembered her voice, and the dream that died with her. The Emperor knew, and he did not fear it, for Vader's grief made him loyal. A man who had lost everything could not risk losing more, and so he obeyed. He watched planets burn. He broke starships in orbit. He choked men from across the void with but a thought. He was not justice. He was not vengeance. He was the absence of hope. But destiny is never static, and the Force, though wounded, was not dead. In secret corners of the galaxy, whispers stirred of survivors, of rebellion, and of a boy born in silence, hidden in sand with his mother's eyes and his father's fire. The Emperor could not hear it. Vader could not feel it. But the Force had begun to stir again. It would not be long before the shadow turned to face its reflection. The echo of the Chosen One was awakening. Chapter 12, Twins of Light, Seed of Rebellion from darkness, light will try to rise. Even as it is crushed, choked, buried beneath centuries of fire and fear, it waits. The Force is patient. It does not forget what balance means. And so, in the final breath of Padma Amidala, as her soul slipped beyond the reach of prophecy and power, life found a way. Not one child, but two, born in the shadow of death, twin stars cast from a dying sun, Luke, Leia. Not warriors, not Jedi, not yet, just sparks, small, bright, and hidden. The last hope of the Chosen One, cradled in secrecy. Yoda saw, and in his eyes, the storm returned. The Jedi were ashes, their temple ruined, the galaxy broken. But these children, they were not just innocent, they were answers to a question the Force had never stopped asking. Can the darkness be unmade? Bail Organa took the girl to Alderaan, to be raised as royalty, as wisdom, as voice. Leia, the fire of her mother, the discipline of a future not yet written. Obi-Wan took the boy to Tatooine, to the sands that had birthed his father. There he would wait, and watch. Luke, the eyes of Anakin, but not yet his weight. He would be taught nothing, not yet, for fear of awakening too soon, for fear of attracting the shadow and Vader. He did not know. The Emperor told him the child had died with Padme. And though the Force whispered otherwise, he believed. He had to, for the truth would undo him. The truth would awaken a name he had buried in fire. And so the twins grew, hidden, divided, but connected by blood, by destiny, by the wound that had created them. Elsewhere, the galaxy groaned beneath the Empire's yoke. Worlds enslaved, cultures erased. The Jedi legends now, mentioned only in whispers, in dying languages. But some remembered, and memory became resistance. Small, insignificant, but enough. Rebellion was born not in starships, but in silence. In the refusal to kneel, in the keeping of stories, and in the shadows of this growing fire, Leia Organa rose in politics. Her voice sharp as her mother's. Luke Skywalker grew among farmers, his eyes always drawn to the stars, his dreams filled with battles he did not understand. The Force began to hum again. A tremor beneath the bones of the galaxy. Something was coming, something Vader could not see, and Sidious could not prevent. The children of the fallen were beginning to rise. Not with sabers, not yet, but with hope. The Emperor felt it, like a splinter. Beneath the skin of the Force, he ordered purges. He hunted the last embers. He unleashed Vader again and again. But the darkness was not enough to cover the cracks. Something was breaking. A future that had once belonged to him was drifting beyond his grasp. And somewhere on a sand-swept world, a boy looked at twin suns and felt, without knowing why, that his time would come. A storm was coming, and in its heart, the shadow would face the only thing it feared. Memory, Chapter 13. The spark ignites the machine time past. The galaxy no longer bled, but it suffocated. Not with chaos, but with order sharpened into a blade. The Empire ruled through silence, through fear, through the breath of a single man. Mechanical, steady, inescapable, Darth Vader. His shadows stretched across systems. His name brought surrender. His mask, emotionless, became the face of control. But power is never truly absolute. Beneath the stillness, something moved. On distant worlds, a rebellion took form, not mighty, not united, but true, fragments of memory, of freedom, of what the galaxy used to be, or could become again, clung to life. And in the heart of this rising, a spark awoke. Luke Skywalker, now grown, now restless, a farm boy, but not simple, not ordinary. He did not know the name Vader, did not know what he carried in his blood, but the Force knew, and it began to call, softly, through dreams, through visions, through a pair of droids falling from the stars. Leia Organa, his twin unknown to him, had already stepped into fire. She carried stolen data, the weakness of the Empire's terrible new weapon, the Death Star. She was captured, tortured, unbroken, and Vader, face to face with her, did not know the truth. She stood before him, eyes defiant, voice cold, his daughter, but the Force kept the veil closed. For now, Luke's journey began not with destiny, but with loss. His aunt and uncle burned to ash by stormtroopers seeking droids he barely understood. Their deaths broke the illusion, tore open the cage of his quiet life. He found Obi-1.od. Odie now, faded, but still watching, still waiting. And the old man told him the first lie that would begin the unraveling. Vader betrayed and murdered your father. Luke believed him, because he had to, because the truth would have crushed him too soon. The Force awakened in him like a river thawing in winter, rough, raw, rushing. He touched a lightsaber for the first time. His father's weapon passed through time and ruin, and the galaxy, the very currents of destiny, shifted, not for the first time, but for the last. The boy would become the hinge of all things, not because he was powerful, but because he still believed. The Death Star rose, a symbol of finality, of fear forged into architecture. It destroyed Alderaan, Leia's world, her family, and still she did not yield. Luke, untrained but burning with purpose, joined the rebellion, flew in the assault and in the battle above. Yavin 4, guided by the Force, he fired the shot that shattered a moon. The Death Star fell. Vader spun into space, and for the first time in decades, the machine had been wounded. The galaxy cheered. The Emperor Seethed. But Vader, he felt something else in the moment before the blast. In the currents of the Force, he had sensed him. The pilot, the boy, the spark, familiar, unexplained, like a ghost whose name he had. Once known, he did not yet know the truth, but he would. The Force had begun to pull the threads together, and when they met again, it would not be as strangers. Chapter 14. The Empire hunts its reflection. The galaxy trembled, not from what had been destroyed, but from what had survived. The Death Star was gone. Vader had failed. The rebellion lived, and so, the Emperor whispered, with teeth beneath his smile, "Find the boy, not just any rebel, the pilot, the one who pierced the Empire's heart with a single beam of light, guided not by rank or training, but by instinct, by the Force." There was no longer doubt. Vader had felt it, that presence in the trench, that impossible sense of familiarity, like a memory waking from fire. He did not understand, but he would. The galaxy became a maze of shadows. Vader scoured systems, hunted survivors, interrogated silence itself. Rebels were captured, tortured, broken. Some spoke of a name, Luke Skywalker, a name like a thunderclap through the shattered halls. Of memory, Skywalker, his own, impossible, unbelievable, yet it fit. And suddenly, the lie of Padma's death became clear. She had lived long enough to give birth. The child had survived. His child and the truth, once buried under armor and rage, returned with force. Vader said nothing to the Emperor. He bowed. He obeyed. But inside, something cracked. Not hope, not yet, but curiosity. And in a heart as scarred as his, curiosity could become danger. Perhaps the boy could be turned, not destroyed, not enslaved, turned together. They could overthrow the Emperor, end this tyranny, rule the galaxy. As father and son, the rebellion scattered forth, hidden beneath ice, fleeting, flickering, fragile. But Vader found them. He always did. The attack was swift, precise, ruthless. Luke escaped, guided by the whisper of Obi-Wan's ghost. Dagobah, a world forgotten, a swamp breathing with ancient life. There he found Yoda, old, twisted by time, a shadow of the master he once was, yet wise still. The training began, not with light, but with truth. Your father was seduced by the dark side, not the whole truth, not yet. Luke was not ready. He had to learn the Force, but he also had to learn loss. Only then could he choose, and choose he would. Meanwhile, Vader's reach grew desperate. He set a trap, Cloud City. He lured Solo, Leia, froze the smuggler in carbonite. Not for strategy, but to wound the boy. Luke came, he always would, and there, in the silent halls of a floating city, father and son met for the first time. The duel was not training, it was revelation. Luke was strong, fearless, but incomplete. Vader toyed with him, tested him, watched him falter. He disarmed him, literally, and then, with no warning, he spoke the words that shattered fate. I am your father. It was not a threat, not a lie, not a manipulation. It was the deepest, oldest truth Vader had carried in silence, and it broke the boy. Luke fell, chose the void over surrender. Overturning, he would rather die than become his father. But the seed was planted, not in Luke, in Vader. The boy had chosen pain, truth, and hope over power. It was a choice Vader had long forgotten, and it haunted him in the silence of his chamber. He sat beneath the stars, his masts cold, his breath steady, and for the first time in years, he remembered the name Anakin. Only for a moment, but the Force felt it, and the Emperor felt it. 2. Chapter 15. The Emperor's Trap and the Sons. Choice the dark side is not loud. It does not seize, it waits, it whispers, and when the heart is uncertain, it offers. The Emperor watched, not through eyes, but through the currents of the Force. He had seen Vader falter, not in battle, but in silence. That name, Skywalker. It stirred something in the shadow, a name like a splinter, so the Master set the final snare. Not for Luke alone, but for both of them. The trap was perfect. He allowed the rebellion to hear of the second Death Star, allowed them to believe it. Was incomplete, undefended, but it was a lie. The station was fully operational, the shield protected, the fleet hidden, and upon its throne of metal and malice, the Emperor waited. He had seen this moment in vision. The boy would come, the father would hesitate, and then the cycle would begin again. A new apprentice, a new order, the same darkness, repainted with youth. Luke knew it was a trap. Yoda, dying, had warned him. Obi-Wan, now only a voice, had confirmed the impossible. Vader was his father, but still, he went, not as a soldier, not as a killer. He went as a son. He had not come to strike. He had come to save, because he believed there was something left of the man who once was Anakin Skywalker. And belief is the one thing the dark side cannot easily consume. He surrendered willingly to Vader, and when they stood face to face, Luke's words did not tremble. I know there is still good in you. But Vader, cloaked in iron, denied it. It is too late for me, son. Yet behind the voice box, the mask, the armor, something cracked. The word son fell from his mouth with a weight he did not expect. The boy had not come in hatred, not to destroy, but to redeem. They ascended together to the throne room, where Palpatine smiled, as if watching a favorite opera unfold. He welcomed Luke, not with chains, but with praise. Young Skywalker, I have been expecting you. He spoke of destiny, of inevitable fall, of power wasted on the weak. He offered Luke the galaxy. The saber lay at his side. Luke did not take it. Not yet. The battle began elsewhere, in the stars. The rebel fleet arrived. The trap was sprung. Ships burned. Pilots died. The Emperor laughed. Witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station. The Death Star unleashed its wrath. The rebels suffered, and all the while he whispered to Luke, strike me down. Give in to your anger. Take your father's place at my side. Luke resisted, but then he saw it. The fleet dying, his friends falling, and finally, Leia, his sister. The Emperor had sensed the bond, and he threatened it. Luke ignited his saber. The duel with Vader began. It was no longer student against master. It was son against father. Luke struck with fury, with fear. Vader matched him, but stumbled. This was not the same boy he had faced in Cloud City. This was a Jedi, and for the first time, Vader fell back. Luke's blade lashed out until he severed Vader's hand. Sparks flew. Metal, clattered. Father and son knelt, mirrored, both disarmed, both broken, and then Luke looked down at Vader's wires. At his own hand, he saw it, the path, what he could become, what he was becoming. He turned off his saber. I am a Jedi, he said softly, like my father before me. The Emperor's smile vanished. So be it. Jedi lightning surged out raw, unnatural. It arced into Luke's body, bending his form in agony. He screamed, called for his father. Not the Sith, not the machine, but Anakin and Vader watched. Motionless, silent, torn. The Emperor raised his hands. More lightning. The boy writhed, and then Vader moved. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped between lightning and sun. He lifted the Emperor, and the screams changed. Palpatine's bolts scorched. His apprentice's armor. His breath sputtered, but Vader did not stop. He hurled the Emperor into the abyss. There was no explosion, only silence, and the faint whimper of a machine dying. Vader collapsed. Luke rushed to him, pulled him from the fire, but it was too late. Help me take this mask off, Vader whispered. Luke hesitated. You'll die. Nothing can stop that. Now, he removed it. And beneath the black, there was a face, pale, scarred, but human. Anakin, he looked at his son. You were right. And with his last breath, Anakin Skywalker returned. Chapter 16. Ashes of the Mask, Echoes of the Father. War ended not with blasters, nor fleets, nor a scream of triumph through the stars. It ended with a breath. The last breath of a man long thought dead. Anakin Skywalker, redeemed not by power, but by love, by his son's belief that there was still light within the deepest darkness. The Chosen One had not destroyed the Sith in glory. He had not fulfilled prophecy with a lightsaber in hand. He had simply chosen to save. And in that moment, the Force exhaled. Luke stood beside the dying shell of his father, the crackling fires of the Death Star's core lighting his face. He did not see a Sith Lord. He did not see a fallen knight. He saw a man, wounded, exhausted, free. No more armor, no more mask, just eyes fading, but finally clear. There were no grand final words, no cosmic secrets whispered in death, only peace, and then stillness. Anakin Skywalker, the slave who became a Jedi, the Jedi who became a monster, the monster who remembered love, was gone. The Death Star burned, its core cracked. The sky began to fall. Luke could not leave him behind. He dragged the armor, piece by piece, through fire and ruin, until escape was the only option. The shuttle rose. The station died, and behind it, the Empire's symbol crumbled into the void. On Endor, the galaxy exhaled. The rebels danced, sang, cried, but Luke stood apart, alone, silent. He built a pyre, not for a villain, not for a tyrant, but for a father. The armor burned. Black turned to red, red to ashdot. The mask that faced the galaxy had feared for decades melted under firelight, and the sky watched, not in judgment, but in mourning. The Force was quiet, but it was there, watching, breathing, waiting, and through it, Luke saw him. Anakin, not the armor, not the rage, but the man. The Jedi, standing beside Yoda and Obi-Wan. Whole, he smiled. And then he was gone. No chains, no pain, no mask, only peace. The galaxy awoke to change. The Empire fractured. The Emperor silent. The rebellion victorious. But Luke knew this was not the end. It was the beginning, because the Force never sleeps. It coils. It waits for new light. New dark, new balance. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but not as the Jedi expected. Not with conquest. Not with glory. With compassion and from the ashes of the mask. The whisper of a father echoed through time. There is always a choice. Chapter 17. The wound that remains in the Force. The war was over. The fire had passed. The shadow had fallen. But the Force did not heal, for it remembers. It always remembers. Where Anakin once stood, radiant with promise, burning with ruin and redeemed by love, the Force bears a scar, a wound that hums. In silence, a place where light and dark met in battle, embraced in death, and gave birth to myth. The Chosen One brought balance, yes, but balance is not peace. Balance is a knife's edge, and the galaxy still walks it. Luke Skywalker returned to the stars, not as a boy, not as a soldier, but as a witness. He had seen the truth behind the legend. He had held the hand of darkness and watched it tremble in the light. He had fought not just his father, but the idea that destiny is fixed, that evil is final, and he won, not by killing, but by refusing, by throwing away his weapon, by opening his heart. He saw what the Jedi had forgotten. Compassion is not weakness. It is freedom, but the galaxy did not understand. They celebrated the fall of an empire, not the return of a soul. They built new monuments, not to Anakin, but to war. And so Luke withdrew, not in fear, not in grief, but in awe. The Force was deeper than he had been taught, older, stranger. It was not light. It was not dark. It was both, and neither he sought its origin, its purpose, its truth, for he knew what had happened to his father could happen again. The Force, when misread, can become a chain. When misunderstood, a weapon. When worshipped blindly, a lie. The Jedi had fallen. The Sith had died. But the wound remained, and it whispered in ruins, in dreams, in bloodlines. For the dark side does not sleep. It merely waits for grief to return, and the light cannot save, unless it remembers. Luke carried his father's legacy, but not his sins. He carried truth, that redemption is real, that failure is not forever, that even in ruin a soul can rise. But the Force had not finished its story. There were others yet to come, new seekers, new deceivers, children born of legend, raised in shadow, and the galaxy still cracked, still yearning, would need them, would test them, the chosen. One had fulfilled the prophecy, but the echo of that choice would ripple for generations. In the void, the armor of Vader drifts no more. It is gone, but the myth endures. Some worship it, some curse it, few understand it. Anakin Skywalker was not a savior, nor a monster. He was both. He was real, and the Force remembers him not with pride, not with sorrow, but with silence, sacred, unbroken, a breath before the next storm. Chapter 18. The Death of the Chosen. The birth of the myth. There is no death in the Force, only transformation, and so Anakin Skywalker did not vanish. He unfolded, from flesh to flame, from shadow to silence, from a man into memory. His story, once hidden in shame, now became legend. But legends lie. They smooth what was jagged. They worship what was broken. They forget. The galaxy rebuilt itself, not upon truth, but upon fragments. The name Vader became forbidden. A mask burned in ceremony, its ashes cast into void. The Empire shattered, the Jedi myth again, and Anakin, father, knight, betrayer, redeemer, became a whisper, a ghost veiled in prophecy, not for his sake, but for the comfort of those who feared the truth of him. Luke told no one the full tale. He did not speak of the mask removed, of the scarred face that smiled. He did not repeat his father's last breath. Some things belong only to silence. He sought not followers, but understanding, not a new Jedi order, but balance. He wandered, studied, grieved. He knew what the Force had shown him, that every light casts a shadow, that every savior risks becoming tyrant, that every myth, if worshipped blindly, becomes a curse. Others tried to reshape the legacy. Politicians erased the Skywalker name. Scholars twisted it. Warlords wore his armor in mockery, but none could touch what truly remained. The choice at the end of all darkness, when rage had faded and the Empire had promised eternity, Anakin chose love, not power, not survival, just love. And in that moment he destroyed the Sith, not with lightning, not with sabers, but by remembering himself. The Force carried him home, not to the Jedi, not to the Sith, but to the center, the balance. He became not a ghost, but a guide, a presence felt in the stillness before storms, in the light between stars, too. The rare few who listened, he whispered, not commands, not revelations, but possibility, that destiny is not a cage, that prophecy is not law, that even the fallen can rise. The myth of the Chosen One was never meant to end in fire, nor in throne rooms, nor in war. It ends and begins in a whisper. You always have a choice. And so this tale, etched in ash, preserved in crystal, echoed across time, a myth not of victory, but of redemption, of a man who fell and still found light. And though his name may fade, his truth will not. For in every generation, the Force waits for someone to hear it, to remember and to choose. The end.